Well, hello and welcome to Interconnected. It's the podcast that explores the intricate link between the profound, weird, and wonderful things. I'm Robin Taylor.
And I'm Jake Robinson.
And in each episode, we discuss an interesting science topic and we challenge ourselves to connect it with a subject that seems to be completely unrelated or a little bit quirky, trivial.
Yeah, think astrophysics and birdsong, or nanotechnology and sand dunes.
So we're going to hope that you think that these podcasts are thought-provoking and entertaining, and we find it entertaining anyway. And we want to explore the interconnectedness of life.
So without further ado, let's get on with the show.
Okay, so before we jump into the main science topic, so we want to just do a quick round of between you and I, the neck of the woods. We'll try and do 30 seconds each. Over to you, Jake.
Alrighty, so my 30 seconds starting now. So what's new in Adelaide in Australia where I am? Well, yesterday it was a bit of a monsoon, so it's actually the middle of the summer right now, but yeah, it was pouring down with rain yesterday. And then today it reached, actually that was the day before yesterday, and then yesterday it reached 47 degrees in South Australia, so absolutely scorching. Let me just type in what's new in Adelaide into Google. Other search engines available. First story, snake catches hilarious response to strange finding in a toilet. I've seen everything, he said, from whips and chains in the cellars to dope crops in the shed. A recent and hilarious insight came from a phone call he received from a panic-stricken resident who asked him to retrieve a snake from her toilet. After receiving an image of the creature, Rowley phoned the resident back immediately. Look, it's not a snake. It's some type of tapeworm. I think you need to go to a chemist. Anyway, we'll move on from that. I didn't actually vet this story before I read it, by the way. So, what's going on in your neck of the woods, Robin?
Okay, I think that went definitely over 30 seconds, so minus points for that.
Sorry.
I've only got something that's it's sort of boring unless you're into this kind of stuff, but it's basically there's been an agreement to agree that the new submarine deal that has been broached by Australia, UK, and the US, AUKUS, that they will not contravene the Rarotonga Treaty, which is supposedly that the South Pacific is nuclear free. How that works in reality, I have no idea. But anyway, the AUKUS deal is basically to build and supply submarines, particularly to counter the Chinese threat.
Yeah.
And they're doing it between the UK and Australia. America. But it's Australia that'll be manning the submarines. But the idea is that they don't come into any South Pacific Island ports.
Okay,
so I think it's that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Okay, so what's today's main topic then, Jake?
All right, so today's topic is coral reef restoration. And what is coral reef restoration in a nutshell, Robin?
Well, I guess up to about half the world's coral reefs have already been lost to severely damaged activity, and scientists predict that all corals will be threatened by the middle of this century. It's largely due to pollution, destructive fishing practices, the aquarium market, where they're trying to take stuff out, mining coral for building materials, particularly for cement, and a warming climate, which causes coral bleaching. That's probably the thing that's been in the news most. So rising and falling water temperatures really stress out the coral, and it causes them to lose their algae, which is part of their symbiotic relationship that the polyps actually have. And that results in coral bleaching, and just means that it's the algae that actually gives the color to the coral. The coral themselves are just purely transparent or white. Coral reef restoration is where you're trying to bring back coral that's been degraded or damaged. And coral reefs are, the best way to describe it is to think of it as being, it's a sort of, all the polyps are growing on top of the previous generations of skeletons that are sitting on top. But that has to be constantly being done. So if it does get damaged, then it starts to pull out the whole coral reef quite quickly. Coral farming is where you're trying to take healthy fragments and just take small bits off and then basically grow them in nurseries, and then you transplant them back onto degraded reefs. Coral larval seeding, where you collect the larvae, which is the offspring that comes out from sexual reproduction of the coral, and you basically raise them in nurseries, and they look a little bit like jellyfish. And then you settle them onto things that reefs can grow onto. And this basically aims to enhance the natural recruitment of other species that live around coral as well. And you can create artificial structures from that. So you can certainly do frames, concrete or metal, and they're placed on the seafloor. And I've actually got a friend who, what he was doing as well was to actually sink ships and then put the coral on that as well. So can certainly do that. So that's basically coral reef restoration in a nutshell.
Wow, cool. Corals are amazing, aren't they? So these diverse ecosystems composed of these colonies of tiny living animals, like you say, called polyps, and they actually are related to sea anemones and jellyfish. So you mentioned jellyfish, actually related to them. So they're found in shallow, warm waters, typically in the tropics, and they play crucial roles in marine biodiversity and ecosystem health as well. So, for instance, they provide a habitat for around 25% of all marine species, even though they only cover roughly 1% of the actual surface of the ocean floor. So that's pretty incredible. So, what are the corals like where you are in Fiji, Robin? Obviously, you're in a nice tropical area of the world.
Yeah, definitely one of the things that we want to do if you're an expat and you come from the frigid north, so the UK, where the most exciting thing you can look at if you dive in quarries is usually a tin can or even the ring pull from that. So yeah, coral reefs here are absolutely amazing.
I was just to say, I remember doing my diving license in the UK in a place called, I think it's called Stony Cove in Leicestershire. So at the same time, my friend who got married in Mexico, and he did his diving license in the beautiful tropical waters out there, and he's sending me photos and stuff. And I did mine in, this 4 degrees Celsius dirty little quarry in Leicestershire. Ooh. Anyway, sorry for jumping in there.
Well, big contrast. I'm sure your pictures don't equate in any way. But anyway, there's two. Usually, there's loads of coral species, but they can be divided very broadly into hard and soft corals. And there's Fiji does tend to have. So when you think of, let's say, coral reef systems like the Great Barrier Reef, then you are mainly in hard corals. But Fiji has an abundance of soft corals, and there's a place not too far away from Suva, it's about 45 minutes away. So between the mainland and another island called Benga, there is a lot of soft coral, which is actually called the soft coral capital of the world, whether that's just a marketing gimmick or not. But they tend to be more like fans that are there, deep purple colors. So, yeah. Really, really interesting stuff. But even I've noticed the coral degrading since I've been here. Coral actually needs to be kept healthy by all the ecosystems around it. And usually the biggest problem is if you overfish on things like parrotfish or fish that tend to eat the algae that would tend to grow on the coral, then they will get smothered. And one of the things you said about the coral is that it needs sunlight in order to have the symbiotic algae do its photosynthesis from inside.
Exactly. So, I found that a lot of tourism has an effect as well. So speedboats dredging up all the silt in the bottom of the sea. That obviously blocks out the sunlight as well. So I guess a lot of things contribute to the degradation of coral reefs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Combination of factors.
So one of the ironies is, as beautiful as it is, it's actually it's this push and pull a little bit between. So one of the ways that you can save the coral is by making it a tourist sort of destination. But it's the tourists that unfortunately are also breaking the coral up. So, especially if let's say you've just got your diving license and you're not very good at keeping your buoyancy and you're just falling on coral and breaking it off all the time. You've got the big fins and then they overcompensate. So that definitely makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, right. And we already mentioned the warming climate obviously has a massive effect as well. So just causing the algae to essentially abandon their symbiotic relationship.
Could you tell us why is that bad? I mean, so maybe we have to just explain a little bit about symbiosis and what's actually happening between the polyps and the algae. And then why is it bad for the algae? Why is it bad for the polyps, which is the actual living part of the coral, that the algae disappear?
Yeah, so I'm not a coral reef expert, but I do know a little bit about lichens, and it's probably a similar kind of symbiosis. So symbiosis essentially means that it's when two organisms or species are living in close association with each other. And a symbiosis doesn't necessarily have to be a positive thing. That's a mutualistic symbiosis where both of the partners benefit from the relationship. But there are also forms of symbiosis, such as commensalism, where one may benefit, but the other one doesn't either benefit or receive any harm. And then there's parasitic symbiosis, is another one of those relationships as well.
Back to the tapeworm in the loo.
Yes, back to the tapeworm. So parasitic relationships are symbiotic as well. So I reckon many people, when you say symbiosis, are thinking that, a nice mutualistic kind of relationship. But there are obviously different forms of symbiosis that occur. So if you're specifically talking about a kind of, a give and take relationship, then you should probably qualify it with mutualistic at the start. But anyway, so between the structure of the main structure of the coral, what's called it's probably called a photobiont. So that's what it's called in a lichen. So this is the part of the symbiosis that actually does the photosynthesis. So that would be a mutualistic relationship. So the structure would provide the photobiont with a home and a nice place to live, and the photobiont provides the structure with the energy it requires. It's the same thing that occurs within the lichen. So lichen, the structural part is also called a mycobiont. So it's the fungi part of the relationship. And then the algae is called, or the cyanobacteria, whatever it is called the photobiont. And it's just these two different kind of organisms that learn to live and benefit each other.
And
so I guess the similar things going on in the coral as the lichen.
Yeah.
But I might be wrong.
No, I think you seem to be onto it. My memory, on the right track. My memory is that we have to remember that the polyps are actually feeding on plankton that's drifting past. So they're sort of filter feeders, and they're kind of like, as it were, carnivorous is the wrong word, but they're extracting stuff out of the water. But the algae is giving them additional carbohydrates.
Sure.
And so what you're doing is so when the algae leave, it means that the polyps are still alive, but only for a certain amount. So the algae is giving them a supplement. And so eventually the coral will die if the algae don't come back into the polyps. So I think that's where we're struggling. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting.
As I say,
it's interesting you say.
Whoa, go for it. You go.
All right. I'm going. But what I spoke to a guy quite recently is a coral expert that's living here in Fiji, and was just talking about exactly the thing you were saying about climate change. Yeah. And so I think one of the things that's interesting about the coral reef restoration, there are coral reef restoration projects that's happening here in Fiji.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be enough. This is the issue that we're really struggling with, because unfortunately what will happen is that we might be, in other words, that the coral reef is not adapted to a warmer and more acidic ocean because of climate change. So we could be growing stuff up only to see it die out in mass things later on. So in fact, what we need to be doing is two things. We need to be sort of upgrading our coral to be better stressed or better able to cope with the stress of warm and more acidic
resilient
water. Yeah, more resilient. And we also need to be doing the farming to kind of get that up and running. So how do you do that? Well, no one's doing sort of weird CRISPR type stuff with, coral. So in other words, changing the DNA at the moment to be able to do that. So having to do it quite traditionally, where you're just looking for where coral can survive in significantly warmer places, and then take them to, this is the weird thing, you have to take them to cooler parts, which you think are going to stay cool as the ocean increases.
Okay.
Because even they couldn't cope with the excess heat that's predicted for the front.
Interesting.
Yeah, really.
So we do a similar thing with vegetation on land. So so part of my role is being a restoration ecologist, and a lot of that involves restoring damaged, degraded ecosystems, terrestrial ecosystems. And so one of the challenges there is selecting plants that will adapt and be more resilient in the face of changing climate. Sometimes you might select a particular seed that's already well adapted to those kind of climatic conditions, and then seeing if it will establish in the slightly cooler environment that you'll know will be warmer in the future.
Right.
Yeah. So, Then there's lots of innovation going on there, especially in the microbiome world. So actually transplanting the microbes with the plants. The same thing might be with corals. I know there's a lot of coral microbiome research going on as well. So again, understanding that symbiotic relationship. So corals, much like lichens, are this kind of nested symbiosis. So you've got the photobiont and the structural part, the polyp, the animal. It is an animal, isn't it? I think the polyp.
Yeah,
And then
it is. Yeah.
but then within that symbiosis, you have another layer of symbiosis, which is the microbiome. So they'll have their own core microbiome that plays important roles in their health as well. So understanding not only the relationship between the two visible things, but also between the visible and the invisible is probably key to understanding how resilient they'll be. It's pretty complex stuff.
Yeah.
So how do coral reefs affect the livelihoods of people in Fiji or in tropical areas? Because they're obviously important ecosystems for humans as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that a couple of things that's happening here. So one of the things is that coral reefs, we tend to, well, the main thing that you can think of is it's a source of protein. So it's a source of food. And here in Fiji, traditionally, the people that would go fishing on the reefs is women.
Okay, yeah.
And now, after colonialism happened, the women actually go fully clothed.
Yeah.
So that's so weird to see that they're kind of, walking.
It's jumping in their jeans.
Yeah, kind of. Well, that they don't. But it's like it's kind of like from head to toe they're going into there.
Yeah, right.
You think, oh man, so they're sort of slightly swimming but slightly wading, so they're definitely in water doing that. And the men tend to go out and do the oceanic or the pelagic fishing, so they're kind of outside the reef to do that. But the reef, of course, is very much also a nursery for pelagics as well.
Okay, so let's move on to the other part of the show, interconnected. So in each episode, we cover a main science topic. So this week it was coral reef restoration, but we also challenge ourselves to link it with a random topic. And this week it's your turn, Robin. So last week I had, nuclear fusion and fungi. So how is today's topic connected to coral reef restoration? And what is it? What's today's linking topic?
All right. Well, I got two for you. The first one is really minor, and I'll cover that at the end, which I think you're referring to a little bit before. But this one I want to talk about is basically the mining families becoming richer as coral reefs degrade. So that's the way I want to try and tackle it. So this is
interesting.
This is the way we would look at it. So basically, as coral reefs degrade, what you'll find is that you're going to get a lot of barriers that stops storm surges. So, or even worst case scenario, tsunami from really affecting the actual coastal areas and that.
So coral reefs protect the coastline from essentially
storm surge, yes,
storm surges and
storm surges.
High waves,
so
etc.
It's not. It's. I need to just describe storm surge just very briefly. It's not. It's not necessarily that the sea level. You can't stop the sea from coming in, but what you can stop it is coming in with force, and that tends to wipe away whatever's on there. So it's like it's significant storm surges that will definitely degrade the coastline and erode it really badly. Okay. And we do have examples.
How do coral reefs protect the coastline? Does it slow
it's just
the
it's just a physical barrier?
Down?
Just an absolute physical barrier, and just slams up against the coral reef, and then the energy's taken out on that. And then what happens is that if that does happen, then people are going to start thinking about how to build an equivalent or something to also break up the power of this storm surge. And the way you do that is probably using building materials, concrete, probably. And one of the key ingredients of concrete is going to be sand. And so you got to get sand from somewhere. So you're going to find that basically people are going to find it from the easiest places that they can find. So we do have, for instance, on our southern coast, we actually do have some sand dunes. And that's where you'll find a lot of builders will actually go and just grab the sand from there to use in their building material. And that's going to destroy the ecosystem from the sand, for whatever's going on in that area. But it does mean that as the coral reefs are degrading, it means there's a bigger requirement for having these barriers built artificially, which means that miners will have to basically extract more sand. So they're going to get richer. and so
Wow.
therefore they've got more stuff to put on their table for
That's
their.
that's a great link, I'd say. So essentially, coral reef degradation could potentially make mining companies' families richer because they profiting from the sand quarries that they run. And often these are inland, aren't they? So they can be completely miles away from where the coral reefs are. Wow.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
So
coral reef degradation can actually cause the degradation of other ecosystems, as you mentioned, sand dunes and
yeah, and I
inland
think that
ecosystems.
people we tend not to understand very much about where something looks barren to us, that we don't
Yeah.
understand that it really is still a functioning ecosystem and there is still cycles going through it. But we
Yes.
tend to use it just with our own eyes and just kind of go, well, there's nothing here. Well, that's again back to your arena, which is the invisible world.
Yes. Wow.
That we could look at that. So yeah,
That's cool. Did you want me to rate you this week?
go for it. Go for it.
Okay. I reckon an 8.4, maybe a
Wow,
5.
you're just copying me. It's good. It's good. It's like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll take
Um,
it. I'll take it. That sounds good to me.
yeah,
So
nice. I love it though. I love the link. Obviously it's quite a morbid link, but it's kind of eye opening, isn't it, to think that an ecosystem somewhere degrading, i.e., coral reef, could cause the degradation of an ecosystem miles away, just because we're trying to protect the coastline
yeah,
from storm surges.
uh,
That's a fascinating link.
and it does also beg the question about just going into the social sphere. So the kind
Yeah,
of where they're definitely. I mean, we're not saying that the miners would definitely want that, but there's definitely
sure.
going to be vested interests where, in this example, there's going to be people who actually would welcome uh, climate change and the degradation of ecosystems because then they would have to supply the services.
Yeah,
So we're kind of like in a warmonger thing where, definitely arms suppliers love wars. We should
yeah,
inherently not like them. We're kind of in a weird
true.
situation like that, huh?
It's a similar scenario, isn't it? Have
Mm,
you heard of the concept called ghost acres? I think
no.
it was. I think it was kind of come up within the 1960s, but essentially it refers to uh, land that's being degraded elsewhere, but somebody's benefiting from it. So you're happy where you are. Say you're working on a
Mm,
farm, you're taking lots of, maybe you're bringing in compost from another area, and that's benefiting your farm. And it can be a super sustainable farm, so it can be organic. So you're growing lots of things, and everyone can see you as a sustainable. Sustainable business, but then you're actually damaging ecosystems miles away. But because it's out of sight, out of mind, that's why they
right.
call it ghost acres. So there are lots of
Ah,
ghost acres across the
so
world. It's a
yeah,
similar kind
yeah,
of thing, isn't it? Like
yeah, yeah,
trying to repair um, the coastline due to reef degradation, but what we're not thinking about is the damage that it's causing to these inland ecosystems and sand dunes, etc. So
yeah,
ghost acres.
absolutely. Right. Okay. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I think that there's something in a combination of economics and sort of environmentalism. It's called triple bottom line, 3BL.
Okay,
I think it was pretty big in the early noughties. It's
right.
not been looked at very much, but basically that would relate directly to that ghost acres concept that you were saying. But effectively, that you can look at things which does have a financial cost, but there's also an environmental cost and a sociological cost for
Yes.
any
Okay.
action that we do. And you normally have to kind of try and do some elaborate hoop jumping to try and convert the environmental and sociological costs into dollars. And normally it's just
Yes.
difficult to do that because you'd have to kind of go, here's a knock on effect that will take maybe years or decades to come through. But when it does come through, then the momentum is
Yeah.
unstoppable, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jake, have you got any updates from the invisible world?
Yeah, let's move on to the news from the Invisible World section. So this week it starts off kind of morbid, but if you actually think about it, it's quite profound and nice to think about in a way. But some people might get a bit creeped out by it. So just a disclaimer there. So after you die, your microbes live on and recycle your body to nourish new life. And so this was said by Jennifer De Bruyne. She's an academic. So essentially, our bodies are covered inside and out with microorganisms. Again, we've spoken about symbiosis, so many of them are symbiotic, mutualistic symbiotic organisms, but also there are some parasites and commensals as well. So we have the whole range of symbiosis occurring in our human bodies. And most microbes, or many of them, are actually keeping us alive and providing lots of important chemicals for our bodies, allowing our walking ecosystems to function. And you might assume that your microbes die with you. So once your body breaks down and your microbes are flushed into the environment, that they might not survive in the real world outside, which is quite interesting to think about, isn't it? Well, recent evidence suggests that not only do your microbes continue to live on after you die, but they actually play an important role in recycling your body so that new life can flourish. And the microbiome of your body once you die is referred to as the necrobiome, or yeah, that's one of them. So necro means kind of, dead
Yes.
tissue, I suppose.
Yeah.
Death. Death. So it's the microbiome of your body when you're dead. And so it's given a different term, and the same kind of principles of ecology apply. As you might think of natural succession. So natural succession occurs in your body at a rapid pace as you die. So the turnover of different communities changes quite rapidly. So when you die, enzymes which normally digest carbohydrates and proteins and fats, so you have lots of enzymes in your body that play key roles in digesting your food, etc., and they start to digest your membranes and your DNA and other cells and components of your bodies. And the byproducts of this this degradation, this breakdown, makes excellent food for your symbiotic bacteria. So the bacteria living on you will absolutely thrive on all this degradation of your body by your enzymes. There's a nice quote by Jennifer De Bruyne that says, it goes like this: like rats on a sinking ship, your bacteria will soon have to abandon their host and survive in the world long enough to find a new host to colonize. Taking advantage of the carbon and nutrients of your body allows them to increase their numbers. A bigger population means a higher probability that at least a few will survive out in the harsher environment and successfully find a new body. So it's easy to assume that your microbes will die off once they are outside of your body. However, De Bruyne's research has shown that the DNA signatures of host-associated microbes can be detected in the soil below decomposing bodies, on the soil surface, and in graves for years after the soft tissues of the body have decomposed. So it's pretty incredible. The newest study suggests that our microbes are not only living in the soil, but they also cooperate with native soil microbes to help decompose your body. And they found that host-associated microbes enhance nitrogen cycling in the soil, which is obviously a vital process for plant health and for plants to grow. So actually, our bodies nourish our microbes, which nourish new life after our death. And there's a final quote for us that says, that our own microbes play an important role in this cycle is one microscopic way we live on after death. And there you go. Slightly morbid, but pretty profound and interesting, I'd say.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, I think, it's fascinating. And I'm going to carry on with the morbid theme here. Do you think about what you will do when you would die? I mean, I know you won't do anything, but have you ever thought about what to do with your body when you die? I think it's one of those things where, one of the things that I've understood is that some trace elements are really hard to fix into the biological thing. So cremation in some ways is a bad idea because you're releasing all these trace elements that are hard to fix into the biological cycle.
Yeah.
Whereas if you had your microbes, breaking it down. So in fact, burial is, from a biological point of view and from a cycling point of view, nicer on the environment. I mean, eventually it'll come back into the thing, but yeah.
No, so I like this perspective of your microbes. You're nourishing your microbes when you're alive. When you die, you nourish them even more, and then your microbes move out into the outside world, cooperate with other microbes, and then nourish new life in plants. I think it's quite a beautiful concept.
Yeah. So I've heard of this thing where people are now cottoning onto this idea, and they're sort of making woods in which you can be buried in those sort of woods, but you're actually buried in a biodegradable sort of wicker type coffin.
Yeah, okay. I thought about that, to be honest.
And then it basically you're going to be planted with some trees. I think you get buried, and then there's a tree that gets planted on top of you.
Yeah.
and then you're nourishing that tree and blah blah blah.
I
blah,
think
blah.
that sounds
So
nicer than being stuck in a coffin in a
I think
shipyard.
so. Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
just my perspective. Nothing against that, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So yeah, please bury me under a tree if I die before you.
Yeah. Okay. I'll come. I wonder if Kate has anything to say about that.
I just wanted to plug my book, so Invisible Friends. So if anyone's watching and want to know more about the microbial world, then I've actually written a book called Invisible Friends: How Microbes Shape Our Lives and the World Around Us. I was going to plug it last week, but I forgot.
Yeah. Well,
Shameless plug.
Can I just help you with your plugging, because I've read it and I love it.
Have you?
I think it's great. Thanks. Yeah. So for all of you that haven't come across this, it's very, very accessible. It's easy to understand, and it's kind of a little bit like the flavor that we're doing here, where you can see there's really weird connections that are going on that are interesting. And yeah, so great job. Really looking forward to it. And I think you're writing more, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm right. So I'm about to publish another book called Tree Wilding. It's about forest restoration and restoring ecosystems. So again, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. Anyway, let's move on from plugging my stuff. Anything you want to plug, Robin?
Well, one of my succulents died.
Did it? Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to hope to see if I can propagate anything, but I think this one has died and shriveled up so badly, I can't propagate anything from it, so I'm going to have to buy another one.
Did you water it? Is that the issue?
It probably was overwatered, I think.
Yeah.
So succulents, I'm just learning.
They just get their moist from the air, don't they, generally?
Not these guys, but you do have to have a specific soil type that doesn't hold on to water. So what tends to happen is, I'm just getting into this as brand new. So for all the succulent experts, you're going to say this is completely wrong. But my understanding is what you do is you wait till it completely dries out the soil, and then you flood it. You flood the soil.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that.
But it has to then dry out again. Yeah.
Okay.
So I suspect that there was some flooding that didn't drain out properly or something.
Okay.
Anyway.
Oh, man.
But the rest is still okay.
Plants. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Nice. Anything else? Any final thoughts for this episode before we wrap up?
No, I think it's great. I'm looking forward to the next topic. Just make it weirder and wackier.
Yeah. Okay. So next time it's your main science topic, and then I have to come up with the linking topic. And looking forward to it. So thank you everybody for tuning in, listening to Interconnected, and we will see you next time.